Hey guys, welcome to the Casey Catch Up. I'm just driving back from a downwind run and I messaged Andrew and asked if he was around to quickly chat. And yeah, he is. So we're going to do a bit of a debrief on the wet feet Voyager race on Oahu, the Hawaii Kai run. And also just we want to get everyone excited about downwind racing coming up in Hawaii this July. So Andrew, or I guess Long Arm Dave on Instagram. Thanks for joining the podcast. And it's actually funny because Andrew used to work at the local shop here in Sydney, and he was the Grom that actually I think you took over my brother's job, didn't you?
Yeah.
Remember
Yep,
Willis?
I did. Yep.
Yeah. So you were the shit kicker. Basically, you were unboxing everything, and you had Willis was stoked that you were the junior and he wasn't anymore.
No,
Yeah.
that was a great gig. That really launched me into a world of water sports that here I am today. I loved working there.
Yeah, I didn't realize because I know he was Andrew, not Long Arm Dave. But when I saw this guy Long Arm Dave come up on Instagram killing all these races, I'm like, I had no idea who it was. And then I think I might have messaged you or commented on something. I'm like, oh, it's Andrew. So
Yeah.
I'm stoked that our paths have crossed again, and I'm looking forward to doing a few runs with you over in Hawaii the next couple of weeks.
Indeed, yeah.
Do you want to give us a bit of a backstory on, I guess, how you got into like the downwind foil stuff?
Sure. So I guess I'll just start with a brief introduction about myself. Hi everybody, my name is Andrew. I'm originally born and raised on Maui, but my mom is Australian, and so that's how I ended up in Australia with James for a year. But I grew up windsurfing and kite surfing and just spending all time in the ocean, and I've been an ocean addict all my life, and canoe paddling too, particularly a lot in high school. Anyway, so I got into foiling about 3.5-4 years ago on an original Go foil setup and one of the old boxy Kalama sups, just learning how to prone paddle into waves and get going. And then after that, I was absolutely hooked and have been ever since. I basically don't touch a surfboard anymore. I'm just totally frothed out on surf foiling and downwind foiling in particular at the moment with the racing season going on.
So good, mate. And like I remember when you were at the shop, you were mainly into kiting, I think, and I was doing the sup racing, and you were always like, "Come for a kite." I was like, I got to train for this sup stuff." You're like, "Yeah," and it was times have changed. Now we're doing the same thing, which is so cool.
Yeah, I totally understand the need to train now because that's all I want to do too.
Yeah, it's an addiction, a good one. But yeah,
Certainly.
yeah.
Yeah,
What do you
certainly. It's a world of endless improvement.
yeah, tell me about I guess your learning, like how you learned to downwind foil. What was the learning curve like? I guess Outrigger canoe stuff would have helped for sure, and the fact you've spent so much time in the ocean. I feel like if you kited or windsurfed, it definitely helps you read the ocean a little bit when it's windy. But yeah, tell us about your learning curve.
Yeah, so I started prone downwinding with Simeon was actually the first person who kind of got me into it. I was surfing old mans one day, or foil surfing, I should say, old mans, and Simeon, I didn't even know at the time, paddles up to me. He's like, "Hey, follow me. Let's paddle a little bit up the reef and try and ride some wind swells down to where we were surf foiling." And so I'm like, "All right, sounds fun." And so I follow him up the reef, and we foil downwind for about not even like a quarter of a mile maybe. And that was kind of the first moment I realized, like, wow, okay, we can. I'd seen the videos, but that was the first moment I realized for myself that I could really start traveling that more distance on the foil than just the surf break. So that kind of, I was riding the original Lift 200, the classic, the one piece foil then. And then shortly after, the Lift 170 got released, and I bought it as soon as it hit the market. And it was straight to Kaikos from there, doing prone runs for the first couple of years of my downwind journey. So yeah, that's kind of where I learned all of my foil downwind skills, and like you said, all of my previous experience in the ocean kind of transferred pretty seamlessly into that transition. So yeah, I had a great, there wasn't too much struggle in the beginning, and so I just got instantly hooked on it. And I just started getting into sup foiling last year after going through many a different boards. I've been through like 3 different boards. They were all like 6 foot by 24 inches wide, and I didn't have the stand-up paddling strength or experience to know how to get those up on foil. And I also only had a lift 120 at the time, so I was also way underfoiled for those boards. But anyway, Eric Sturman sold me his Barracuda last year, and then that's when my sup journey really took off, as I had the appropriate board to do the kind of downwinding I wanted to do. And yeah, it's just been a journey of love ever since.
Yeah. What dimensions is that Barracuda you have now, the one you bought off Eric?
So yeah, I've since sold it off to another friend, but that was 7.1 by 19 and 85 liters. So it's quite small for me. I'm 190 pounds, so
Yeah.
80 or 85 kilos for you guys. So I was on a sinker, but just the length of the board alone was enough to give me the glide I needed to get up. So yeah, it taught me a lot riding a smaller board.
Yeah. And what are you on now? What have you upgraded to?
Now I've upgraded. I've got a 7 foot by 19 by 100 liter Essential Foamworks Hawaii board that I helped design, and this guy Mark on Oahu made for me. And I've also got an 8 foot by 19 and a half 105 liter Barracuda that I've been riding predominantly on Maui because it goes great in the bumps over here.
Yeah, awesome. So do you prefer the longer, so 8 foot, and then, sorry, I just blacked out. I missed the dimensions of the other one.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, 8 foot by 19 and a half and 105 liters.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, right. So yeah, I've been playing around with a few different lengths, and there's definitely no question you get up easier with that longer, skinnier board. But it's just a question of how long you want to go to make it how much easier, because you can only paddle up so small a foil, and there's a point where you paddle up a foil too small, and it can be slower if the conditions aren't right, is what I've found anyway. I saw your run you did with Kane, I guess upwind of Molokai. You guys were doing some seriously fast kilometers. And I think you're on the 110 from memory.
Yep.
And for those days when you're using those small, fast foils, yeah, definitely easier. If you just get up quicker on the longer boards, right?
Yeah, it really makes a difference riding something with a bit of length. I feel like I haven't found much of a limit yet to how small of a foil I can get up. The 110 is the smallest foil I've tried to get up on that board length, but I have a 70 coming soon, so I guess I'll push that boundary a little bit further and see if I can get that up and going when the bumps are seriously cooking. Because I found that some of the bumps over here I'm trying to get on the 110 are just too fast for the foil, and I'm looking for something with maybe a little bit less surface area and resistance, so that way I can go that touch faster that I need to get on those really fast moving ground swells.
So you want to go faster than the 110 can go. Gotcha.
Yeah. The 110 is as fast as I need for most races. Like, I think it's a pretty situational foil. I haven't even tested it yet, so I can't say much. It's just a dream at this point, but I'm hoping it'll do what I want it to.
Yeah, so cool. Exciting. Okay, I want to go into the race, the Molokai Wet Feet Voyager race, but I want to go before that. I think we finished with that. I'd be really interested to hear what you've been doing in training for the race, like the channel crossings coming up. So I assume you're doing Maui to Molokai, Molokai to Oahu, and maybe Paddle as well. Is that right?
Yeah. I haven't registered for Paddle, but I expect I will, and definitely doing M2M and M2O.
Yeah, cool. So
yeah, training wise,
those races, that'd be fun.
Yeah, guaranteed. training wise, I go downwinding as much as I can. It's windy on Maui just about every day, so usually I'm doing 1, 2, 3 runs, as many as I can fit into a day, really. And then I have a combination of land training that I do 5 or 6 days a week as well.
Nice. Is that like gym sort of stuff, or like cardio stuff, or?
Yeah, it's a lot of like cardio and plyometrics. I haven't been doing much weight training, but just sort of a lot of foiling specific workouts, high intensity interval training, that kind of thing, to really improve my overall fitness and muscle strength and tone and everything, and endurance.
Yeah, awesome. It's so cool that there's people like, taking it seriously. Like, it's not just a hobby anymore. It's becoming a sport, which is, for me, so exciting, because I've, from the SUPs, for me coming from the SUP background, and I guess you coming from the outrigger canoe background, I guess we know how beneficial training is for race day, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's exciting to see, see yourself and other guys training hard for these races that are coming up, because it's becoming, there's more and more people doing it, and it's becoming a sport.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's guys like you and Kai Lenny. I know you guys don't sleep. You guys just train all the time. And so if I'm not training as hard as you all, I'm just getting left behind. So that's my motivation.
Yeah, no, it's so cool that I guess you're, following what we've done. But yeah, I feel like we're just getting started, with the foil stuff, and it's been around a little while, but Molokai to Oahu this year is going to be huge, I reckon, in terms of the foiling, and I hope Maui to Molokai is too, because it deserves to have a lot of people turn up. What I saw that run you did with Kane. You guys started a little bit further up from Molokai, so tell us about that run, and why you start further
up. So basically we want somewhere just basically to get a longer run in. Maliko is only 10 miles, which is only a third of the length of the majority of the race, the longer races we're going to be doing this summer. And so the main thing is just to have a longer run, and that's kind of the farthest east we can go, and have easy access to the coast. Otherwise we have to go much farther east, and you don't have the same wind and bump strength the further east you go, because you're leaving the Venturi effect of the mountains that Maui has. Where we've been going from, though, it's a pristine bay that you paddle out from, and you paddle around this point and you're instantly in big bumps. So it's great training for being, in the middle of a channel, because that's kind of where we're starting, is in the middle, is out in really deep water in the ocean. And the angle that you have to go out at is at a bit of a quarter. So it's also good practice to quarter on bumps, going at an angle, as that's what the majority of the races will be angled at as well. Molokai isn't straight downwind, and Maui to Molokai is more downwind, but still a bit of an angle that you're going at to get to the finish.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It makes total sense. I used to go from I think I've done 1, maybe 2 runs from Kenai, so that's further east. I used to go from Kenai, and it was good training, but yeah, the bumps weren't good until probably about where you're starting from, just east of Piahi.
Yep. Yeah, I've heard stories of people doing it on a foil, and it sounds really tough. It's where the coast starts to bend harder north, and your angle out is really steep. It sounds pretty exhausting, and is a fair amount of driving to get up there. So we just try and do 2 of the longer runs in a day if we really want to get some miles in.
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. And then that's it. I guess the beauty. I sort of had a bit of a smile on my face when you said, training hard and like what's training, and same as me, like majority of it is just getting out on foil and exposing yourself to as many conditions as possible, because I think the downwind sports are very much there's skills. There's a lot of skills involved, and how you read the ocean is so important. And if you only ever did land-based stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you're missing out on a big chunk of a big chunk of the skill set that's required, that you just can't get unless you're doing it. So it's got to be like the most enjoyable way to train, right?
Yeah, yeah, it certainly is. It's just not quite physically demanding enough, I find, to like really prepare yourself for a longer race, unfortunately. So you got to supplement with something else. But
So yeah,
yeah,
I totally agree.
yeah,
You it's almost too easy. Especially the foiling. The sup downwind stuff was definitely harder because you had to paddle for every bump. But on the foil, the level of glide you get is something. It was unmatched to anything else. Downwind ocean sports. It's can be too easy when it clicks.
oh, certainly, yeah. And going back to what you said about different conditions, like even exposing yourself to different runs improves your skill set tremendously. I spent most of my time in my my early downwinding days on Oahu, because I go to school over there. I don't spend much time on Maui anymore. And since coming back to Maui, I found my bump reading ability in larger open ocean bumps was lacking, and I've learned tremendously by just being exposed to those two very different runs.
Absolutely. It's I just did a botany run, so it's the other side of the bridge, and I'd actually never done a Botany Bay run. I usually stick to the northern beaches,
Mm-hmm.
and just try to wait for the southerlies or northerlies. But we've had like no wind for the last 3 weeks. So I think I've done
Yeah,
one downwind run, and I'm out there like every time it's windy. I try to get out there. So we had a good
yeah,
westerly today, which you either go to Palm Beach, and there's a westerly run where you have to wing upwind, and then that's why the deflate downwind thing sort of came up. I came up with that
yep,
because you couldn't drive up because it was a national park,
uh-huh,
or you drive to Botany. And I just did 2 runs in Botany, and I guess I got about 12 k's for the first one and just over 10 for the second. And yeah, it was super clean. Like I guess like the
wow,
Kia run, just like groomers. It's just side to side, but it's definitely not the best training for channel crossings because it's using big foils going like 3 minutes to 3 minute 30 kilometers. So
oh wow, yeah,
it's better than nothing, but I can't wait to get over to Maui and get the consistent conditions that I guess are more similar to what the racing will be like. I'd imagine.
certainly, yeah. But hey, any training is good training, so get it while you can.
That's it. Just you definitely got to. I feel like, and especially the first run, just then it was because I haven't downwinded for a while. You almost got to. You got to hone in, and compared to surf foiling, I've been doing lots of surf foiling, just like pumping around in circles and reading the waves, and because there hasn't been any wind. But
Yeah,
it's so different to downwind and like preempting when that bump's going to come under you, and or cutting across or going up and over or whatever it is, the lines you're taking. It's there's nothing like downwind foiling for tuning in that skill set.
certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Who's your pick? You're over there, and I've had yourself and Kane are their favourites for M2O, which is based on form. You guys are doing some runs, and you getting right up there in the races. From you being over there, who's your pick for M2M and then M2O?
I don't want to say anything, man. Everybody's a threat at this point after what I've seen this weekend. Like, all cards are on the table, man. Like,
Yeah.
anything can
Yeah.
happen in one of those races. You could have a bad start, you could have a fall, you could have a malfunction. Like, yeah, I don't want to say anything and jinx anybody's race or yeah. But
Yeah.
I think
Do you
everybody
think
has a pretty good idea.
could you try? Do you reckon there'd be like a top 10 that you could imagine, like if you had to, or a top 5? I'm just curious because you're over there and you're seeing the guys that are going quick. Um,
Well, yeah, I guess from Hawaii, like basically you take the top 5 from the race this weekend. Simeon, Kane, Malai McEnally, he showed up with a big performance on Saturday too. Nick Kapule as well. He
mhm.
had an accident at the very end of the race, but he was right up there with me at the finish as well, giving me a run for my money. So there's definitely quite a handful of guys in Hawaii that are really stepping up and making the sport very competitive.
Yeah,
And I'm excited to see how everybody else goes. And obviously guys like Kai Lenny and the Spencer brothers and Slater Trout and all these guys who we haven't even seen race yet this year, and I never get to do runs with them because they're secret sendas. So yeah,
yeah. I
it's
love that
it's
secret
really
senders. That yeah,
yeah. I'm not
there was
I'm not.
oh, sorry, you go.
Go ahead. No, I didn't have anything to say.
I like that secret senders because there definitely seems to be a bit of a change in the culture on Maui from what I can see from socials. The
Hmm.
Spencer brothers and Kai were notoriously very secretive with their foils back in like 2018, 2019 when the
Uh-huh.
the racing was on. And
Yeah.
I'm loving to see that yourself and Kane are sharing your stats and telling everyone what gear you're using and doing the races and I guess opening it up a little bit and showing people what's possible and um, it'll be interesting, to see what the secret senders, the Spencer brothers and Kai and Slater and all those guys are. Interesting to see what they get up to, and like because you only ever see what they're doing race day. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see what they've got, what they've been keeping secret, or if they haven't, and they're just if they're just working on stuff or whatever it is. But it's exciting to share stuff, and I think it grows the sport. So
Yeah.
I think I feel like it's gotten to the point where there's more people, um, and people are happy to share because they just want more people to join.
Yeah, I mean that's my philosophy is knowledge is power. I think we can only gain by sharing knowledge with our competitors. Maybe not all of our knowledge, but at least a good amount of things that we know. Because I mean, I don't. It's a new sport, and I want people to get into it and have fun and not feel like they're missing out. I want people to feel like they can be as competitive as possible. And if I'm going to beat someone, I want to know that I beat them on my sheer skill alone, not just because I had some secret that I kept to myself the entire time. And also just the fact that training with other people makes you better. Like you can only push so hard by yourself, but when you've got somebody next to you who's pushing hard, it really brings the best out of you. So training with other people and is really essential, I think, in your training process.
Yeah, no, I agree, and nothing to take away from Kai and the Spencer boys, but there's
Yeah.
it's just a different way to look at it, I guess, and they've got the difference is I think a lot of the time it's like time. So like I know Kai's got twins now, and I know Jeffrey and Finn. They're doing a lot of winging stuff too, but also they've got their logistics sorted. Like they can organise their own lifts. Where the beauty of I guess downwind finally, from what I can, from what just now we had like 3 or 4 guys meet up at the bottom of the run. We all loaded up in the car. We all drove up to the top. And we sorted logistics ourselves because we didn't have wives or girlfriends or anything, friends dropping us off at
Hmm.
the start, and that community, and we all swapped foils, and I got Josh and I swapped foils, and Benny and Mick were talking about changing stuff too, and it's just like you said, knowledge is power, and share it all, and the conversations on the drive up to the start, and the conversations
Yeah.
driving back to the car. It's that's almost part of the fun, and but you need time. You do need time to do it. I've taken like 5 hours out of them to do that run with those boys. We had, two runs, but it's you can't do that all the time. So the secret senders, maybe just people, they're the time poor senders. They're just going out and making it work,
Yeah. Yeah. No, certainly. And I don't want to knock their training programs either. These guys are obviously very well proven athletes, and they know what they're doing. But they've just got the resources to go out there and do it all the time. and train in the conditions that they're going to race in. Whereas some of us lower level guys just kind of got to wing it a little bit and figure out for ourselves. And the best way for us to get better is to share amongst each other. When we have a lack of knowledge on things we haven't done before.
For sure. No wrong or right way. We'll all be frothing on race day, that's for sure. We'll be, that's why I've always loved the racing, is you get all these people together, and people that don't always have the time to get out for that windy day. But they rock up for race day because they've set the time aside. So it's I'm pumped for all the racing in Hawaii this year. But you've just done a race over on Oahu, the Hawaii Kai wet feed Voyager race. Do you want to give us a bit of a rundown? You sort of alluded to a little bit then, and thanks for giving us your guys to watch, because I think a lot of people are interested about that. But what are you thinking? Maybe a play-by-play, because I heard it was pretty wild conditions.
Yeah, sure. So the last few days we've had 20 to 40 mile an hour winds for the last 4 or 5 days in Hawaii. So by the time Saturday came, the ocean was angry. There was a lot of energy out there, a lot of groundswell built up. And then we also had a fresh there's a lot of east groundswell built up. And then we had a fresh south groundswell that had come in from the Southern Ocean. So it made for some pretty interesting conditions on the extreme end of the spectrum. We had 25 to 35 mile an hour winds, and well overhead groundswell, head high and even double overhead in some places. So we were in for quite a day of racing. And we had a huge show out as well. There were like 70 something people in the race, wingers and downwind sup foilers. So it was awesome. We had there were a few people who had literally popped up on their first sup run the day before come out and were so frothed up to do the race, they came and did it. Awesome. So props to those guys for being willing to send it, especially in unruly conditions. But race day. So everybody, all the wingers and stand-up foilers were lined up together. It was a pretty chaotic start. Everybody was kind of spread out. Like I tried to be by myself, but I didn't. I was more in like the middle of the line. And Kane was out on the end, and Simeon was close to me, but then all the other suppers were kind of away from me too. But the gun went off, and I spent maybe a minute or two trying to get up on foil after falling off my board once and then getting up. And I get up and I'm looking for where the lead boat is, because I knew I obviously wasn't in the lead. And I look, I finally find the lead boat, and I'm trying to see who it is, and I see Kane way outside in the head. And so that was gave me something to chase. And so the race is going. I'm just getting into my rhythm, trying to sort of track Kane. He's in the lead, and he's the person who I'm trying to hunt down. So I'm tracking him. I stay inside of him because I wanted to have a shorter line, given that he was ahead. So I thought maybe I'd catch him if I had a shorter route. And then he ended up cutting further inside than I wanted to go. So I had to take an outside line. I didn't want to be on the same line as him because I knew it would be unlikely I would catch him if I was. And anyway, that kind of paid off. I think my outside line was a little bit faster through the bay. And then maybe about halfway through the race, I don't see Kane out of the corner of my eye anymore. So he must have fallen. He did fall somewhere in the middle. I think he said he hit a fish or something. And so I don't see anybody else around me, like it's the fate of the ocean that day. We're really at its mercy. And I don't see anybody else around me. I figured Kane had fallen, so he must be kind of far behind. And I'm just focused on not falling. The conditions were crazy. There's big backwash coming off the cliffs and big groundswell coming in. I was just focused on having a clean race. And so I don't fall in and can hold my lead. And anyway, I'm coming through to the finishing part of the race, the last third of the run. and the watercolor completely changes. There's no contrast on the water anymore. I can't tell a wind bump from a groundswell from a flat spot on the ocean. It was a pretty surreal sort of change in conditions. And then I'm coming around towards the finish, and a fellow team rider, Nick Capule, I hear him holler behind me, and it scares the crap out of me. I almost fell off my foil just from him screaming behind me. And we're anyway, he gets a groundswell. Yeah. He gets a groundswell and he's coming in on my inside. And so I'm like, okay, it's back on. I really got to push now. So he pushed me, and we were on the same bump at times, like a couple feet from each other. We could have reached out and touched each other with our arms. We were so close to each other. And then he, unfortunately, I believe, hit his paddle on his foil and fell. And then I was by myself again to the finish. And finally coming into the line, I overshot the finish line a little bit due to the big surf that was coming in. I couldn't quite see exactly where I was going, and I was coming in on the tail end of a big set. And I made a wrong selection and wave choice coming in, because I was worried the wave I was on was going to close out the entire channel, which it did. So I had to kind of pull out and hang out behind it and wait and ride a bump behind it, hoping that it would take me in. And eventually I hit the white water, cavitate, and lose lift on my foil, and I'm stuck paddling 25 yards from the finish line. And here comes Kane right behind me, just whizzing past into the finish line. And it was a pretty exciting end to the race.
Wow.
Yeah, so nobody had a perfect run, really. It was kind of a matter of chance and skill and making the right choices when it came down to it. So yeah.
Awesome. So and what were you guys riding? So you're on the 110 from lift?
Yeah, I was riding the 110 28-inch original mast and a 25 glide, and my 7-foot by 19 board.
Yeah. And Kane was on the 90. Is that correct?
Yeah, Kane was riding the 90 and his custom KT board.
And Nick, was he on a lift as well?
Nick was also on a 110, and so was Malaya, who came in third. They were all on 110s. Most of the top finishers were on a 110, and Kane was the only one on a 90.
Yeah, right. So conditions were Zane, my mate Zane Westwood. He's used the 110 a bit, and so it switches between the 110 if it's good condition, like sort of bigger conditions. But he finds the 120 a bit easier when it's lighter winds.
Yep.
But he's excited to get it out in bigger bumps. So
I'm sure
it sounds like conditions have to be pretty decent to be using the 110, I'd imagine, because it's fast.
Yes and no. It is incredibly fast, but I've actually used it on some surprisingly small days. It doesn't just need to be bombing for that wing to work here. I think just because of the depth of the water and the speed at which a lot of the bumps are moving at, we can kind of get away with riding it on smaller conditions than maybe you guys would be able to over there, and the power that we have in the swells over here. So yeah, I mean, I've been riding it predominantly no matter what the conditions, unless it's really, really dribbly and small and I want to just go out and have fun on the 150. But yeah, the 110 will surprise me sometimes with its low end ability for sure.
So cool. That's what I was hoping, because there's nothing worse than I think a foil that only goes fast for downwind, because it limits you to the good days, and especially unless you're on Maui or Oahu, you can definitely in real world downwind conditions, it's hard to always use that one foil. So interesting, you sort of mentioned, but I was going to, my next question was, what do you use when conditions are not so good? And it sounds like the 150 is your step up, I guess, or your step down, whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah, that's my next up foil. I ride the 120 occasionally, but if it's 120 conditions, I can ride the 110 and go faster than I would on the 120. So if it's not quite 110, I'm just going to jump up to the 150, because the 150 is still really quick. It's got a pretty tremendous speed range on the low end and the high end, and it's just easier to dig out of flat spots. If you get into a bit of a rut, it's just easier to get the 150 going again. So you may not have it quite the top end of the 120, but overall, I think it averages about the same, and is a little bit easier. So I may as well just save the work on my legs.
Yeah. Yeah. And then interesting, you're saying you're using the glide tail, because a lot of the lift crew over here are running and a bunch of different tails, a lot of canes tails, and
Yeah.
there's lots of tail options nowadays. But you're running the glide.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really had a lot of opportunity to ride anything else. I've kind of just stuck with the stock lift stuff my entire foiling career, and I've just grown to love the 25. It's really fast and efficient, and I just love it.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said about, and you sound like you're sort of down this train of thought. There's a lot to be said about sticking with one set of gear and getting to know it like really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you see other people who are just which I guess more towards Kane, who just love to play with gear and tweak it and get it to just how they like it.
Yeah.
And certainly different avenues to take. I think both work, but
Certainly.
yeah, it's the familiarity that you can achieve with something you use all the time can sometimes outweigh the physics, so to speak, of the benefits of physics that Kane's working hard on with his tails and assuming that all the tuning that he does as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for me, because I tune stuff a little bit, but once I find something that I like, I'm pretty hesitant to change because of that familiarity is. I don't know. I feel like it's powerful if you know exactly how it's going to work every time. You can adjust.
Certainly.
You can tune your body. You can adjust your own body mechanics rather than the foil mechanics, I guess. Which yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, your confidence.
For me, good to hear that there's someone else that's kind of plug and play, and making it work, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to plug and play and learn what differences little changes can make, but it's just not how Lyft is set up with their gear, and I'm totally okay with it because I love the way it rides right out of the box. And yeah, being familiar with your gear it gives a lot of confidence in your riding, and confidence can speak a lot for itself in how you foil. If you know exactly what it's going to do in certain conditions, you don't have to second guess yourself. And
yeah, for sure. I didn't touch on it earlier, but the transition from like the prone foiling, actually, and then thanks for that debrief on the race. That sounds super exciting. Super
certainly,
cool that there's so many guys so close together. That's what racing's all about. And the thing I personally love about racing is that you do like just a downwind run with a few mates, and there's always the one guy. It's like, oh, I wasn't trying to race. I was just trying to surf. I was just surfing. I was just not going for speed. But in a race, it's like everyone's there to go as fast as they can, and there's no holding back. You're doing everything you can to be first across that finish line. So that's to me, it's fun, and I still think there's definitely. I just those last two runs I just did at Botany, like that was all just surfing. Like I was actually going for the maximum distance rather than minimum time. So super cool that there's so many crew that are trying to go as fast as they can, and they're all so close together. But what I wanted to ask was, I didn't touch on it earlier, but when you went from prone foiling, the Kaiko's run, to then sup foiling, and obviously you spoke about the board and the progression from that, but how are your sup skills basically? Because when you were living in Sydney, there wasn't too much sup going on, and then I saw you in Maui, probably 2018 or 2019, and you were doing the outrigger canoe sort of racing stuff, which was it's got to help, right? It's got to help paddling skills. It's very similar, the single blade. So how was that transition onto the subfoil?
Yeah, I mean, apart from, I did a little bit of stand-up paddling when I was in Sydney. You know, I'd come to the Narrabeen Lake and do a little bit of race boarding and stuff with you guys on the Sunday, and but it certainly
Yeah.
wasn't extensive at all, and a little bit of sup surfing. So I had a tiny bit of sup background. You know, I knew how to paddle and stand up on a board. And then canoe paddling really develops my strength in a lot of the muscles that is necessary for it, and just a bit more technique, you know, in knowing how to position your arms and get a good grip on the paddle, and how far to take your stroke and those sorts of things. So it was more so just having the right board that to open up the possibilities for the sup and the right foil. And more so than developing a lot of the skill, because the background that I had kind of set me up pretty well for the transition that I needed to make.
Yeah. Did you have any like standout like shockers, like some really bad runs that you want to share with crew? Because a lot of people listen to this are people that are trying to like that are learning, and I guess they probably they hate the people that had no issues learning.
Okay, yeah, I should say that it definitely wasn't issueless for me. No, I mean, I definitely had a couple of shockers where I paddled the whole run, but one of the biggest standouts was actually my second real sup downwind run. So I'd popped up. So this was about this time last year. I had just finally gotten my first pop up at Kaiko's and was super stoked. So I called Simeon and was like, "Hey, I just got my first pop up. I'm ready to go to Hawaii Kai." He's like, "Cool, okay, come jump in the car with us at whatever time." And I go up to Hawaii Kai and I go and I paddle probably for like 30 minutes before I eventually pop up. And I pop up and I make it the whole way and I'm good to go, and I'm super stoked. And Simeon calls me up after the run. He's like, "Yeah, man, you got a lot of good momentum going for you. You should come and do North Shore with us tomorrow." And the North Shore run is a 20 miler that goes straight from Turtle Bay to Mokuleia. And it's a totally different setup than Hawaii Kai. So I'm super frothed, so I'm not going to turn down the offer. So I, I go up to the North Shore with everybody, and they're all shocked to see me because I knew I'd popped up the first day before. And we paddle out, and the bumps are totally different to what I was used to popping up in the day before. And I basically get out there and struggle for about 20 minutes or so while everybody's gone off and is out of view completely, not popping up. And so I basically didn't want to chicken out of the run because I had driven all that way to do it and was so frothed to complete it that I ended up paddling into a wave on my stomach on the board at this little slab that was just downwind of where I was, and popped up on my stomach with the wave, got to my feet, grabbed my paddle, and then pumped out to the wind line and just sent the entire run without having popped up on a bump. I just paddled into a wave and went for it. My thinking being, once I got out in the middle of the ocean, the bumps would set up to more how I was used to, and I'd be able to get up again. But that wasn't the case. By the time I got about midway through the run, the bumps had completely changed and kind of flattened out, and I was fully safety foiling, just trying to not fall. And by that point, I was about 4 miles out from land in the middle of nowhere, out by the shark buoys, actually, where the North Shore dive tours do their shark tours. But anyway, I get a dry run. Fortunately, don't come down and don't have to paddle miles back to land. But yeah, that was a pretty kind of white knuckle run, you know, where I had no choice but to make it, basically, and I just had to bear down and do it. Yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, that's I know the feeling. I've said it before on the podcast, but I did a prone run with Jeffrey and Finn Spencer back in probably 2016 maybe, and we went from Noriega's, and we finished at Sugar Cove, and on our prone boards, caught a wave and they disappeared. Yeah, no worries. Thanks for showing me the takeoff. I got going and I fell off somewhere between, probably just outside Paia, and it took me so long to chip into a wave on my I was on like a 5-foot prone board, and
Uh-huh.
they were starting to get worried. They were like, I think I came in like just on dark. And they're like, "Oh, glad you made it.
Oh my
We worried not
gosh.
to, drive up and look for you." But yeah. And then once you're up after you got that chip in, you're just like, "All right, don't fall, because if prone, you gotta find another wave." And it was getting dark. So yeah, those situations are high stress.
Yeah. But very rewarding at the finish, that's for sure. But yeah, no, the Maui prone runs are
Oh
a
yeah,
very high stakes affair, man. There's like nowhere to chip in other than like Ho'okipa or Mamas and then Outer Baldwin, and those are your 3 places you have to get back on a wave. Otherwise, you're paddling a mile or so back
yeah,
to shore.
yeah. You guys are crazy. The Maui boys are crazy on those prone runs. It's a serious risk, but that sort of makes it fun too. I understand that.
Certainly.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Andrew. I It's been good to catch up. I fly over on the 9th, so we'll have to get into straightening some runs. I reckon I'll be stoked
Yeah.
to do some Molokai runs with you, and you have to show me the start spot for that little spot you start a little bit further up the coast.
Oh, we'll definitely be doing plenty of those for sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on, James.